Hello and thank you for joining us. This is Brian, your host of the Perish the Thought Show. The opinions of said host and our guests have not been sanitized or scientifically tested, so please consume at your own risk. Ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is listening, welcome back to the program. My next guests are Elia Torres and Celina Ramos. They are sisters whose family immigrated to the U.S. in 1981, 2 short years after the start of the brutal Salvadoran Civil War that ravaged the country from 1979 to 1992. Listen in as they tell tales of how the family lived and survived literally in the crossfire of warring groups. The hope is you will come away with a greater appreciation for living in the relative peace and freedom here in the United States. Ladies, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I wanted you here because there seems to be a growing attitude about America and how horrible of a place it is, and it's the systemic racism and all the horrible things that people can think about. And so I wanted to have you here because you both immigrated from El Salvador, right? When was that?
1981.
1981. Okay, that's a day or two, right? How old were you, Celina, when you came here?
I was 8.
You were 8. And Elia?
I was 14.
14.
Mm-hmm. Just about 15.
Okay. There are 100 other countries in the world that someone could move to. So why America? Why did your parents choose America to come to?
What my understanding from what our dad talked to us about was, one, because we had family living here already. We had 2 aunts living here. And so during the Civil War in El Salvador, they wanted, our family to be safe. So that's why they told our dad that, maybe we should consider moving out and coming here. But there were other countries considered, right, Elia?
Canada was one of them.
And Australia.
Australia also.
So.
But it was a lot easier for us because our aunts were here. So they applied for visa for my dad, her brother. So that's why it was a lot easier for us to get a visa here than going in Canada, because we did apply to Canada and they denied the visa.
Canada denied your visa?
Mm-hmm.
And why was that, do you think?
Well, because since we were, my dad had applied for asylum because of the problems in El Salvador. Canada didn't see that we were really at risk, that we were.
We're not targets,
we were not target,
the violence or whatever that was happening at the time.
Yeah, they were giving visa only to those people who were actually in real danger. And I mean, we were in danger. I mean, there was a war in El Salvador and everyone was, but they were only accepting those who were actually
specifically targeted,
involved directly in the struggle, in the strife between the guerrillas and the.
So tell us a little bit about, or a lot of it, the Civil War that was going on. How long did that go on?
Well, it started in 1979, around that
78.
time.
Well, actually even earlier than that I can remember. Probably rebels, riots and things like this. Probably way even like in San Miguel, where she was born. Way before that, people were still already getting complaining about the issues, because I mean our countries, Central America, they have corrupted politicians. And so, people, obviously, farmers especially, are the ones who are least heard. And so they started, and then all of a sudden, from what I remember, all of a sudden I see soldiers and this group of people fighting. You know, there were guns. You know, it just all of a sudden, just we were the kids outside playing, and all of a sudden we hear gunshots. You know, in the street. So, and that's actually in San, even like I say, in San Miguel, when back in '73, let's say. But it got worse, obviously, as
it progressed. Yeah.
It progressed to a point that it was not livable. It went on until probably in the late '80s, probably, I would think,
yeah.
where finally the guerrillas, not gorillas, the guerrillas.
The guerrillas, yeah. The would call it like
the
a militia
rebels,
group
yeah,
or something.
exactly.
They won. They won the, you know, for the people. So we assumingly we thought it was for the people. By that time, I remember, I mean, a lot of, I mean, like thousands upon thousands of Salvadoranians died.
About 8,000 people, civilians that had nothing to do with the
because we you know, you were like I was explaining, you know, sometimes we would be walking, many times I would be walking to the school, you know, with my younger sister. She's only 2 years older than Celina, and I would be walking to school, and all of a sudden a encounter between the soldiers and the rebels will be just there, and so we are just
in the middle of the.
Yeah.
So in the cross, so these 8,000 people that died were just kind of what we consider collateral damage from war.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's horrific.
So many people die, and then at the end of that, it turned out that this group that they said that they were fighting for the people turned out to be as corrupted.
Power corrupts, absolutely.
And it's so disappointing because you see, you know, all these people that die for a cause, and to find out that nothing happened, no change.
So the corruption just went from one group to another.
Basically, yeah.
So that, I'm trying to get my head around. We have no clue here. And it's hard to understand the value of being here in America. I don't appreciate it. I grew up here in California. School fights, that's about all I dealt with. But nothing to imagine, you know, walking to school innocently and just have a.
And that's normal. I mean, and I feel like that's
normal
how it
for
should
there.
be. How it should be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know, for anywhere. I mean, you don't expect to grow up in a neighborhood where there's, you know, violence and, you know, shooting. You know, you don't know where it's going to come from. It's not normal. I mean, you expect, you know, for your kids to grow up in a quiet, you know, environment. You know, normal. It's not the norm. You know, to be. You know, grow up in a place where
you're fearing for your life every day.
Yeah. There were times because, I mean, it went to the point that every day there was always an encounter, and so even when we would go out, I'm sure my mom, you know, as kids, we don't know the stress that she was going through. But my dad, he was a surveyor, so he would be sent to, measure. You know, the survey. So, and we would not see him for weeks, and so we're on this town, and we don't know, you know,
if he's okay.
And
he doesn't know if his family is okay.
Yeah,
you know, being far away.
Yeah, and because we have to go to school. We continue our life. We have to continue, and yeah, there were many times, like even when I was in the school. And there would be encounters, and the rebels, even the soldiers, they would come inside our schools, and then they would start fighting.
Look, because they were looking for people, you know, they thought that, you know, somebody might have, you know, run into the school, and so they went in after them.
And they would put the students in danger. So what we would do, we'd have to go and hide under the stairs, you know, places where, you know, trying to. The teachers trying to keep the students safe, and because of that, then students also got killed, you know, and that was normal, you know, that would, and then after that was over, how can you study like this?
You can't focus on,
No.
what my homework assignment.
No,
You're just trying to survive. I can't
exactly.
even. That messes with your.
After that, I mean, the first thing I do is I'll run and look for my little sister. At that time, she was in kindergarten, and because I'm worried for her, I don't know what happened to her, and then on top of that, there were people on the street, dead already, and
that's you. Like you just saw people.
Yeah, in the streets.
Dead in the streets daily.
Well, I saw a couple.
did.
I saw a couple, but from far away. I
Yeah.
didn't get.
That stays with you.
Yeah, I mean, I can picture, when we were walking by, and my dad kept saying, "No, don't look over there, don't look over there."
Yeah.
So,
So because when I used to go and pick up, since my sister was smaller, so I will hold
shelter her.
Yeah, and I will hold her face, so that way she would not look. But I have to look because I'm on the older one, so I have to, and sometimes you have to, I was curious, so I would look to see if I knew that person, which I hated. I hated because I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway because I want to know if I knew if it was a friend of mine or something, So no, it was not.
So how many
Good memories.
was this going on your entire childhood?
Probably between that I can remember, probably 10 till we come here, 14, 15.
Years.
about 5 years.
Yeah,
No,
five
about 5
no.
years.
5
So
years.
5 years of your child.
Yeah.
Then
Because
you
before
watched this.
Yeah, because before that, I mean, if it was when it started, we didn't see it in our cities. It started in other
The outskirts,
areas.
yeah.
But as people as the rebellion
revolution, yeah.
it grew, then it started to, it's kind of like an epidemic that it
Starts spreading,
one place
yeah.
and it starts spreading everywhere, and then everybody gets together, and then by then there were several rebel groups, that they wanted to overrun the country, the
government?
the government. They
Because
wanted
the
to,
government was corrupt.
Mhm. Yeah, the government was. And then there was a point where we had a curfew.
Okay.
And then after 6:00 p.m. from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. no one was allowed to be in the street. And if anyone was seen in the street, you will be killed.
They just shoot on sight.
Mhm,
That was
yeah.
their instruction.
And that's how one of our friends got killed, Roberto.
Yeah, I remember.
Because what happened is that he was in the bus. He was driving to the city, and apparently he fell asleep, and the bus driver didn't see him, and so he left and parked the bus, and so apparently that's what they're concluding.
The story you have.
Concluding, and then of course he got out and.
Just trying to make his way home.
Yeah, and they found him dead in the street, of course. Yeah.
Wow. And how old was he?
He probably was in his early 20s.
Wow.
Yeah, 21, 22. Probably.
So him knowing that curfew, knowing that
Yeah.
I wonder why he didn't just stay in the
Yeah.
bus or something until the
Yeah.
next day. You never
Yeah,
know.
who
I mean,
knows?
who knows?
Who knows
Again,
what went on?
I can't imagine trying to survive just mentally in something like that, confusing and not knowing where to go, or wondering if you're going to get
Yeah, I don't know
shot
what he was
or
thinking.
hurt at every turn. I mean, I've interviewed some war veterans, and just that kind of mentality where they just didn't know if around every bend it was going to be their last day.
Mm-hmm.
The stress that must cause, and the PTSD that
But if you
carries.
think about it, as a veteran, you kind of expect to see this kind of strife. That you don't know, what's going to happen. I mean, you're conditioned to that. That's why
Right.
you go to boot camp and all that. They train you.
True.
As a civilian,
Yeah, you're just
As a
going.
kid?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's sun's out. I'm going to go play. And
Yeah, and I'm thinking I'm guessing he woke up. He was confused. Oh shoot! I fell asleep, and then what to do? I don't. His mind. I wonder what the state of mind it was.
Well, as a 20-year-old, you're not
think-
thinking straight. You're still a kid.
You think you can
get away with
get
it.
away with it. Try maybe around and get home however you can, and hopefully they will not see you that you're in the street. I'm guessing that
He might have
yeah,
been thinking that.
So the civilians that lost their lives, were people allowed to have like funerals for them, or was it
Yeah.
you just there wasn't like a just mass
No.
slaughters and people just going
No.
into mass graves or anything like that?
No.
And sometimes, of course, is the if you were actually connected with any of the rebels, let's say, then you don't want to let the other person know that you know this person, because they were always spies, let's say.
Informants and spies, yes.
Yeah, they were who to know, because right now apparently that's what's going on in Salvador, some things like this.
Yeah.
And then and they come up with, sometimes they could lie, they could say, yeah, you are a member of one of the guerrillas, and then the soldiers will just come to your home and kill you with no proof of anything.
Yeah, they don't have
Just from somebody's word of mouth.
just somebody's word.
Yeah.
Well, I remember like when COVID was going crazy and people were turning in, they were like, I don't know if they were given rewards, or I know like in China they were turning in your neighbors for not wearing your masks. And I think people got scared because they hear about situations like you grew up with, where my neighbor could say, oh, these guys they're doing this, and this. Like you say, they just come in, no proof, there's no judge, jury, nothing. You just on someone's word.
So you were always, I remember for me, we were always among my older siblings, because with Celina and my other sister, they were too young to understand what was going on. But with us, we used to talk, but like always in whisper. We don't express ourselves, because we don't know who else is listening and will. So
there's that fear on top of being shot from being outside, and then now who? So you don't trust anyone anymore.
No, you don't trust anyone. Yeah.
Which divides people even more.
Yeah.
What a horrible way to live.
Yeah. And then in that, to the point, like I say, that you don't know if the next day you're going to make it back home. Every day I remember that I do. I remember that with any of my family, who is the one who will be missing today. That fear that you don't know if we will all be together. But actually we were blessed, because my whole family, we were able to live. We were able to, no one was harmed.
Well, that is a blessing.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
all of us, yeah.
I just 2 days ago, I was talking with a friend who served like a study abroad in Chile when Pinochet was, and I don't know history. I remember history. I was taught history in high school, but don't remember it. And he was saying that right after he got there is when Pinochet came out of power. But everyone that he talked to knew somebody who knew someone who had disappeared.
Oh,
Everyone.
Yeah.
Same situation. They would just show up in the middle of the night, kind of thing. That's like that. That's reminiscent of like Nazi Germany. Like it's almost like a fairy tale when I hear it, because it doesn't seem real.
Every day you live in fear. Your life is fear. You don't know anything else, but know that you need to just survive. As a child, I'm still. I feel like, is this life? Is
this all there is?
Is there?
Is
Because you don't know. You don't know any more than what you're seeing in your country. You hear on TV and all that, but that's only on TV. Your life is this, and this is what your world is. Live in fear. It's.
It seems so bleak and hopeless.
Yeah.
What does that do to you? What does that do to you? I mean, you were probably young enough that it didn't matter. So what does that do to your psyche or your mentality? I mean, what?
Sometimes when I don't know, Celina, but sometimes when because once in a while I will, obviously when we came here, I will still have nightmares of course. I felt like I was still living over there. When we came here was sometime in April. So, 2 months later, 3 months later, it was 4th of July here, and then you have the fireworks, and it brought all this memory, because that sound,
the popping sound of gunfire.
It felt like I was back in El Salvador again. That fear, are we going to, are we back again? No, this can be.
No, and I did actually, for the longest time, I still had like with the sound of helicopters. Yeah. I would get like this little panic sensation whenever I hear like a helicopter. It would make my heart, start pounding, but then just, oh wait, no, it's just a helicopter. No, there's nothing.
Yeah,
nothing
but the helicopters meant different things there.
Yeah, because that's where they would. I don't know
the
why
soldiers
the soldiers
would.
I guess that's how they would, transport. I guess I'm not sure, but I just remember that every time there was a helicopter sound, then you'd start hearing, the gunshots.
Because sometimes they know where the group of rebels were sitting. Someone told them, tipped them on that there's a group, and then they start, all of a sudden we hear the helicopter, and we start hearing all the
gunfire,
the gunfires, and yeah, all of us.
Yeah, and so that's what I remember having for the longest time, for years afterwards. Every time I hear a helicopter, like, I would get that little anxious feeling, like.
That's post-war PTSD for sure. Yeah. It follows all the same.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes while we were sleeping, all of a sudden the gunshots, we'll hear that, and then my dad will just gather us and try to hide us the farthest
away from the
house.
Yeah,
because our house got my mom used to have a store. And so it was kind of like
it was a corner. It was in the corner house, so from both sides.
So we would get shot. Our house was all with
gunshots.
Yeah, with a lot of gunshots,
bullet holes in your house just because of the crossfire. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they weren't targeting you, but
well, they weren't targeting us, but we were just right in the middle, like they say. What do you call it?
Crossfire. Yeah.
They call it collateral damage in military.
The one thing, remember, and this is right before we left. The one that I don't know. It was some I don't know guns. I don't know calibers of okay. But a huge bullet
that went
traversed the whole way. From the front of the house, from the front door. Yeah. My dad tracked it from the front of the house to all the way to the back of the house. Yeah. And you used to sleep in
one of the beds.
In one of the beds was a
bunk bed.
A bunk bed. Yeah. In the top bunk, the bullet went through the headrail. It was a metal headrail. It went through the head, the headboard, and to the back wall, through the bathroom in the back, to all the way.
That night I would have died, but I was fighting because I was, for a couple of days it had been pretty calm. And so I wanted to sleep on my bed. And then I was fighting with my dad, and my dad, no, you're not going to sleep because something, if something happened.
For that very reason.
Yeah, and so he always had us sleep on the floor for the same reason. And that very night, I remember I wanted to sleep, and then my dad said no.
Did he say, see, this is why I told you that?
Yeah, that's why even I still remember I would not be alive because of my dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so what you said 81. So what did that process look like of you uprooting your entire lives there and coming here? How did you drive? Did you fly? Mm-hmm. How did you get here?
My dad drove
from El Salvador through Guatemala, Mexico,
all the way to California.
Where did you come in California?
Los Angeles.
Oh, like Tijuana?
Tijuana.
Tijuana.
It was Tijuana. Yeah, I don't remember.
Tijuana, through Tijuana and then Los Angeles. Yeah.
So why Tijuana?
Oh.
Is that where your family was?
Yeah, my aunt used to live
in
LA.
LA, okay.
Oh, yeah. And Long Beach.
Yeah, Long Beach. Yeah, that's where she lived, and so that's where we we first meet.
And how long did that journey take?
Oh, that was a long journey. At least about a week.
So did you know people along the way, or?
So in Mexico, right, my uncle, his wife
They had migrated a year before because of the situation. They had left El Salvador and they moved to Mexico.
Okay.
And they were in Jalisco. They were staying there. And so a year later, of course, when we were driving by, then we stopped there and we rested there for at least a day and continue driving. And my dad drove the whole time because at that time we were all underage.
The oldest was what, 17?
17.
Yeah. So he didn't know how to drive.
He didn't know how to drive.
So you just pack up your clothes in a suitcase and that's it? You left everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, they sold most everything and a few things. So my dad had a brother still in El Salvador. And so he left some things, some furniture, books and stuff that he says, like, I can't take that, but just keep it for me until I can come and get it. Just never did.
Yeah.
Do you still have family there?
Yeah, cousins and, mainly cousins because my uncle, he just passed away.
Yeah, he died last year.
Yeah.
So the Civil War somewhat ended.
Like in the
late 80s?
84, no, like 84, 86. I think that's when it finally
started. Yeah.
It eased, they came to,
some peace agreements.
But it didn't get better though.
As far as the
corruption,
corruption's still there, but as far as the
lifestyle and safety.
Yeah. But it got worse in a sense because then already the country it had that fear. People don't trust each other, and then we have now these gangs, like the Maratrucha,
which is happening again now, right?
Well, right
recently,
now is being controlled with this new government. So we hopefully that this new government is better. It's not as corrupted.
It seems like a lot of people are talking about him. Bukele is the new president now. He's been now for 2 years.
2 years now, and
he's made a lot of changes. So he has, targeted some of the corrupt branches and people.
And got rid of even that they were in office. Got rid of a lot of those corrupted officials and things. So people, we have hope as citizens.
So they have hope that this guy will make good decisions and changes for the country. And people that have gone back since he's taken off, they say they have seen a change. So
it's safe enough to go back. You can go back and visit.
Because before, even after that, when things kind of settled down, a lot of people weren't comfortable even going there because some friends that have traveled, they between gangs they knew now. So now we don't have these rebels, but now we have all these malicious.
It's the same thing, it's just called something different.
Yeah, but now they're waiting if they know that the families from another country are coming, and so they're waiting for you at the airport, and so they'll kidnap you, assault you, and ask for ransoms. Oh, and it's another nightmare for all these families. So yeah, I never went back to El Salvador.
Well, I don't know why you would.
Yeah.
No, it's not like it's a constant. Nowadays, it's not. It's different. It's not people live. Are able to make a life for themselves.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as it used to be. And again, what we lived through was nothing because that was when it was starting even, so what we lived through was probably just the beginning of, whatever
worse. Other people have worse stories.
So what you described is pretty horrific and you're saying it got worse.
Yeah.
For some people, they did go through worse. Families, lost, half of their family members and the whole,
Oh, so that's why I say that we were blessed in a sense because our whole family was able to leave the country and came together. We always remained together. while other families, they had to leave behind
Others.
their children sometimes, or their parents sometimes, to be able to do something outside and then come back and get their family. So.
Well, let me ask you this. When you see the situations on our border, again, the media spins things any way they want, so who knows what's really going on. What do you think of when you see that? These people crossing the border like they're there. You guys came in a car.
I can understand why they're doing it.
Oh,
I can understand.
I would do the same thing if I was living in that.
Yeah. It's a sacrifice that they make, but I guess the hope of making it across and making a better life for themselves, their children, is worth it. Risking their life than to stay.
Well, I lived down in Palm Springs for a while, and there's a little town called Mecca down there. And it's, I would consider it kind of a dumpy town by American standards. And I looked at that, and I'm thinking to myself, what must they be coming from if they're coming to that little dive of a town? I can't imagine the horrors they must be coming from to risk so much to come to this. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you here is when I hear people tearing down the country. I mean, what would you say? What would you say if have you had conversations with people that have that kind of mentality?
In a sense, because they see, politically, I don't want to get political here, but the U.S. did have a lot to do with some of the stuff that happened, so that's the part that they resent the U.S. for.
Because they were supporting
the dark.
They were supporting the corrupted government, and that's the what the citizens also
were fighting against.
And so how can
you support somebody who's oppressing us?
Okay, well, that makes sense.
So that's some.
So there is some. I mean, obviously there is some.
Yeah.
Governments are, by nature, I think, horrible.
There's some interest. So
it's a selfish, power-driven. I'm not a fan of any governments, really. Honestly, I'm not an anarchist, but the corruption is ridiculous on every level, and the philosophy. The secret combinations is. I used to think those were like Al-Qaeda in the Middle East, but I think it's government.
There's more than that. We only in the news we hear one thing, but we don't know what actually is happening.
You hear what the news wants you to hear, and so it's hard to know what's really going on. But
unless you live through it, then you actually know what's going on. Yeah, but I mean, and that's a lot of stuff. But as far as people appreciate and at least the U.S. treats its citizens. There's a basic human
level of decency
that
at least we get that here, where in other countries they don't care.
And it's a lot of, again, there's a lot of people who want control, but the good thing about the United States, I think, is because of the Constitution and the first fathers, and what they have a good idea of how
it should be.
Yeah, and so if we continue with that, and I think that's the reason why the country is the way it is compared to other countries.
But the founding fathers are just grumpy old white men.
But they knew what.
Because I hear that all the time.
But at least the basic, the basic respect for human, and the efforts that people make. At least, there's that respect
and that freedom, of being able to express yourself, which in other countries you don't have.
Yeah, that First Amendment freedom of speech thing doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, and so that's the reason. That why is it that we were always afraid of expressing ourselves? Because if you do, next day you end up, you and your whole family not just there, but
as
probably
and set us an example. If you speak against us, this is what you can expect.
And that's not just in our country. In other countries, I saw it too. So it's not.
No country has a monopoly on evil or goodness.
No. But, the opportunity, and again, the other thing is the opportunities here in the U.S. Yes, it's hard, but you have more opportunities here than you do in like in other countries.
It's more of a level playing field to have a decent life.
Yeah, right. You do. If you really, a lot of people have made it because that if you can make it. That's the thing. If you really work hard and focus on what you really want to do, you are able to make it. Yes, there are a lot of obstacles in front of you. Because there will be a lot of them. But if you can make it through, here you can make it. While in other countries, probably the obstacles are a lot huger. That
no matter what you do, someone's going to take whatever success you create.
And a lot of the things that happen in El Salvador, Latin America countries, is like one person has sole power over if you make it or not. Yeah. If somebody does not like you, does not want you to succeed, they can, with their own powers, with their own connections, tell them, no, don't give him the position, don't let him get grants, don't let him, and
they have the power to do that. Well, their law is written, and so there's always something that is, the good thing is that there's always something that protects the individual here. While in other ones,
the rights of the individual are paramount here, which you're maybe not seeing elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
So you hear people saying the Constitution is old and outdated and it should be rewritten. What do you say to that?
Yeah, there's always room for improvement. Yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
Saying that things change. It's old. Times change, but
keep it fair.
But as long as it keeps,
and it's good for everyone. I think
it respects people's rights, and but for the most part, I think it works.
It has worked all this time. Why is it that in other countries we're still having problems?
Well, yeah, I've with Mexico and South America, I've never heard anything other. Some of them I've heard good things, like Costa Rica.
Yeah, Costa
Rica.
But I know El Salvador's been a mess for 40, 50 years. Mexico has a corruption problem out. When you go visit, our kids are whining about their internet being too slow. And we've just visited someone who has dirt floors, and they're happy with it. And the streets are all a mess, and so I'm not a big fan of taxation, but I see the upsides of that too.
Yeah.
Where you have some infrastructure that's not falling apart. But
I think it's another thing, obviously, is the education, because at least like in our country, till a certain time the education was there, but then after that, you don't have the opportunity to if you have the talent. There are a lot of hidden talents out there, that it just goes to waste because you never
have opportunity
to express it.
While here, even in elementary school, you are able to see those talents and then you can help those students to become
them,
and then you see the difference on. You don't hide those talents if you can. I there are times that of course is the situation is different, but if you weren't able to discover the talent, is because you missed that opportunity, not because you didn't have the opportunity. While in other countries, you have it, but the doors are shut down.
So the entrepreneurial spirit is there, but just not the mechanism to let it flourish.
Exactly.
Like there more and more opportunity here.
Yeah, I mean, because people, are busy worrying about, their day-to-day living. How, am I going to have enough money to pay, for food, for rent? They don't have time to sit back and say, oh, okay, I can start a business, and or my creativity, there's no time for that.
Just in survival mode is
you're in survival
mode. That is the biggest crusher of entrepreneurial spirit. It's just when you're surviving, because you can't think about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so, your parents, are they still with us?
Yeah, my dad passed away 7 years ago.
50.
Oh my gosh.
12 years ago now.
12 now. Okay.
7, 12. It's all fuzzy, man.
Yeah, 2007, right? Yeah, okay, 2007.
And your mom?
Mom's still with us.
With us, yes.
And where does she live?
She lives in Springville.
Okay, she's here. Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
And are you sibling-wise, where are your other siblings?
They're here.
They're here in Utah County?
Mm-hmm. No, in Salt Lake and...
Well, Hugo's the one in Salt Lake.
Yeah, he's the only one actually. Yeah, everyone else is nearby.
Well, this is a great
Stay
success
together.
story. That's a true, not rags to riches, but because that's
American
probably
dream,
word.
you could say.
Yeah,
American
no,
dream.
that's exactly it. And so when us fat, lazy Americans are whining about how hard our lives are, that's why I want to
Yeah.
hear stories like this.
Yeah,
That makes
it
me
is.
at least appreciate what
Yeah.
I
Don't take
have.
for granted basically of
And
what
we-
you have.
and we
because-
do, because we have no perspective. I don't think.
That's the whole thing. There's no perspective of, what you have and what others don't until you live through it. Then you
Yeah.
really don't.
And even
understand it.
visiting.
Because-
Whenever we go to visit, we go to Cabo, and we try to find. We tap into the local ward and try to find someone to help, something to do, just to see. Because there's the tourist side, that's great and it's fun, but I want to get and do something while I'm there. And I don't know if am I really doing anything? I don't know. I try, just at least to show my kids.
Or to inspire. I think to show up and be there. I think you inspire
Yeah.
others.
And I think this, like hearing other people's voices, also is a good way, because then it will probably open someone's heart. Let's say here, I have it really good here. By doing this, the pen writing, and letting people know what's going on and what's going on here and everywhere else, it's I think it's a seed that is planted to open someone's mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because just what I look outside of my window here, and this is ridiculous in a good way. And
This is a palace.
it's
You're
ridiculous.
blessed.
It is.
Compared
is, and
to
some days
how
I'm like,
some other people live.
I don't. Yeah, because we go down there and see, and then my son's whining about his internet speed. I'm like, son, did you not just see what we saw? And how.
They just don't understand, because again, like I said, the perspective, that it is not something that they,
They're forced to be.
yeah.
Yeah, to live that way.
Unless you, it's kind of like a simple example. You may have heard it. The difference between, if I tell you that this candle, the fire, it burns, it burns. So what? Or I tell you, put your hand there and burn yourself. So the difference is one's understanding and the other one is feeling it.
One's an idea, one's experiencing it. Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So it is. So they really. I mean, you can tell them, but they can just get an idea. But until maybe later on through life is when they become to understand and realize
Through their own experiences.
Through their own.
and see
Is
what
when
it
they
is.
and experience, I think, is what it makes people mature too.
Like you, why do you do what you do? Why do you feel so strongly about it? You've grown up,
Became
and,
interested.
and you've become interested in other people's stories, right?
Yeah, that's a gift from God. I don't think I've ever had to really work at that, so I don't know if I appreciate that, because I love hearing. That's why you're here. But I don't. That's just I've always had that
From a young age,
I think
you
from
saw-
like high school age, I found myself being interested in people and just hearing their stories. Maybe that's just what I tell myself to justify what I'm doing. I don't know.
No, I mean that's why you're here. Yeah, I think it's well, in my opinion, I think it's correct. It's right, because if it wasn't, then you wouldn't be doing this. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I'm hoping to add some value.
It took you to this part where you're hearing because not just you, but everyone else, other people who are interested probably, will hear and maybe connect and want to do something about it too.
Or at the very least, just help them understand or help them appreciate what they have.
Yeah, grow. Because, like I say, I think we humans, that's what we need to have, that connection. Because if it never comes to your path, how would you know? It needs to come to you, and this is one way. They create that an idea already of, what these people are going through that, and then as we hear, we are learning, experiencing, and maturing, and to a point that it will be a time when it will click and say, oh, this is what I probably need to do for society, because we are as humans, that's how we work. We need each other.
Absolutely, we need each other, yeah, for sure.
And I think you're opening a window, and having people understand, the other side too, and not to be so quick to judge.
Yeah.
As to why people do what they do and why they live the way they do. Kind of be more understanding, more patient with others that are not the same as they are. Because they come from a different background. They have lived through things that we could not even imagine.
Yeah, we every house has a story, is what I say all the time. Mm-hmm. And when I say house, I don't mean physically a house, but you as a house, your experiences you've had make you make the decisions. And it is easy to just judge them and, well, you're an idiot for doing that. Well, there's a reason why. So I've tried to change my approach and ask people, well, why do you, especially politically, because we're in such a politically charged world right now. Mm-hmm. Why do you think the way you think? For example, I had my cousin on the other day, and she's raised in Berkeley, the Bay Area. Extreme, very, very liberal mindset that she's grown up with her whole life. And when Roe v. Wade was overturned, she just lost her mind and this is the worst thing that can happen. And I didn't really understand why she felt that way. So I said, come on, and I just want to hear why this is so important to you. And I learned a lot. And in this social media world, we can just easy to bash each other behind our keyboards. And so a lot of her friends were like, that was great that you two could come together, because I've generally a conservative mindset where I was raised, and we don't have to kill each other. We can just understand why. And I wasn't trying to change her mind. And
just to listen.
And I hope my mind could get I was open to having my mind changed. And if we did more of that, then maybe less problems like you grew up with.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the important things that I actually have learned as I grow is that part. Don't ever judge anybody, because we are people who like to judge anyway, no matter what. Because that's our first impression. Our first impression, we are already judging, and so then you're not. This is me, of course, trying to
analyze.
To be able to hear you, to be able to listen to you. I shouldn't be judging you. Then I'm listening to you 100%. It's
a skill. Mm-hmm. Listening is a skill.
Yeah.
Listening to understand, not listening to know what you're going to say next. And when I first started my podcast, I would list out my questions. And I found that I was so hyper-focused on the next question that I wasn't listening to the first one, the answer to the first one. So I stopped doing that and just let it flow.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to... And several times I've had to stop myself in this conversation while you were talking. I was thinking about what I was going to say next, and I had to tell my brain, shut up. Just let her... Doesn't matter what you're going to say, just let her talk. So I still have to work on that.
No,
Because we're conditioned to just
go on.
say the next thing and have the So as I think we're wrapping this up, what counsel would you have for, I call us fat lazy Americans, who don't appreciate what we have? What counsel would you have to people who just don't have a perspective? And it's not their fault, they just don't have a perspective.
But going back to what I just said, just keep an open mind. When you meet somebody who's, not
Looks different,
native,
thinks different.
is not native,
or why they think differently. Because
and
you never know.
Yeah.
Well,
if you do stop and listen, then you might learn something.
Let me back up. I didn't even ask this question. Since being here, you've been here most of your life. Do you experience racism from other cultures or other races here?
I was lucky. I felt like, or either that, or it's because I ignore it myself. I never felt it.
That's good.
Myself, I didn't, because I try not to focus so much on what others are assuming things. I hear it. I hear that it happens. It has happened to my friends and things, and then, but my experience has always been a little bit different. And I think it's because as an individual, it's something that I'm not focusing on. I'm focusing on moving forward, and not those things that will block me, because it's an emotional thing. When you feel like you're not wanted, I hear it, and I can imagine how that person might be feeling, but then I don't want to feel that way, so I just ignore it. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I
see
ignore.
What you want to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I'm happier that way. So I'm happy.
That's a good perspective.
No, yeah, I haven't either. I honestly, no, I've never. And sometimes, some people have said, did you see that way that person,
Mm-hmm.
said something or looked at you? And I'm like, no.
So someone else with you noticed something, but you didn't.
Exactly.
Because they're looking for it almost.
Right.
And they say things, or, but again, like we're saying, it's not something that I'm not looking for that. I'm focusing on what I'm doing right now. That, if you have that path, and there are a lot of assumptions, and people, there are people who are vicious and mean, and they want to hurt you if you allow them, so you
don't allow it.
I don't allow myself. I don't. Maybe they did, okay, but they're the ones who did it. Not I continue moving, mentally, of course, because all this is mental anyway.
We do give a lot of power to other people sometimes without realizing it.
It's funny though, because Lily, our younger sister, she says she has too. She has experienced a few times when people would comment or say things that were, kind of racist. So she says she has, but
directly to her, or just in general that they were just being idiots.
Both directly to her and in general, that she says she's experienced that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's always going to be that. There's always going to be racist people. Mm-hmm. It's when I hear America is systemically racist, that's where I have, again, I'm of the majority class too. I'm white, male, Christian, straight, whatever. So I haven't seen it, and I haven't heard a lot of people who have seen it, but you hear about it in the media, but they're trying to stir people up also.
Yeah, and I think, of course, I don't want to, because I know that there are people who have lived it, but sometimes I think we pay too much attention to it. We are allowing it to be a part of our, let's pretend, of course, I obviously I'm Hispanic, and there have been people who have said things, you Mexican, because all of us, even if I'm from El Salvador, wherever they are, they say that we are Mexican. Mexican is all from
Mexico all the way
to South America. Everyone is Mexican, and I have heard.
Yeah.
What's the word that when to belittle you or to make you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I say those are just words. This person is already. When something is getting podrido, raw, when someone is getting rotten, that person is
already a rotten person.
Why should I pay attention to these words that are not helping me anyway?
But I have to disagree with you in a certain extent, because we do have to make people aware of it, that it's there, that it's happening.
Yeah, but
we cannot hide. I mean, I know maybe you're talking just to a person, an individual,
mm-hmm.
but also you need to let others know that, hey, this person, is.
Yeah, I mean,
this is their way of thinking. It's like, do you agree with it? Do you agree with their?
No, I don't agree.
No. I'm just saying,
absolutely,
just to let them know. Okay, this is who it is. This is that, and they can think whatever they want. But is that somebody you really want to associate yourself with?
No, of course not.
You have to make others aware. That's what I'm saying. That it exists.
Of course, and then even calling it out.
That's
ironically enough. I was in the temple, Payson Temple, and I heard some old guys making derogatory comments about Mexicans. And I was floored. I'm like, okay, we're in the temple, the house of God, in theory,
mm-hmm.
and you're debasing Mexican people who are children of God as well. So maybe you ought to think about that. And I thought these old guys were just going to tear into me. But they didn't. They acknowledged, that they were. And if you were to ask them, are you a racist person? They probably would have said,
no.
Well, no.
Yeah.
No.
But, and I don't know, is making a ridiculous comment you're not thinking through make you racist? I don't know. It's just ignorant, I think.
Ignorance.
It's just ignorance. And I think it's just, they're not sensitive enough to think about their words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a lazy thinking anyway.
Mm-hmm.
To not like someone because of a race.
No.
If you're not going to like someone, don't like them because they're an asshole or something. Their personality. I mean, at least put some effort into it.
Right.
But,
or sometimes I think people just repeat
what
others, just to agree with the group, and they repeat things that it could be hurtful to others, but they don't realize. Again, that's the ignorance and not being aware of, maybe later on there's I shouldn't have said that. But by then it's too late sometimes. But,
Well, ladies, thank you so much for coming. This has been really, really interesting. If nothing else, I got something out of it, so I hope someone else did. Any final thoughts that you might have, that something I didn't ask you that you might want to share?
We're absolutely thankful that what this country has offered us, being able to get to where we are. We have lived the American dream, and it is possible, and give others the opportunity to also be able to achieve it.
The tools are given to us. Like tools are there. It's up to you to use them and use them well.
Darn, that's personal responsibility. How dare you say such horrible things, that we're each responsible for our own outcomes to some extent. Yeah. No, that's very good. That's true. Thank you again for your perspective and what you've done. And that's it helps me try to appreciate more of where I'm at in life right now and the things I have. So thank you again for listening to the Parish to Thought Show. We would love your comments and feedback on our website at briankeithparish.com/feedback. If you love or hate what you hear, please give us a rating on whatever platform you find us. You're still here? Click on the next episode for more from the Parish to Thought Show. Thank you again for listening to the show. I really appreciate the time you spend to hear the words and hear our guests. If you or anyone you know would like to be a guest on the show, please send an email to parishpodcast@gmail.com. That's parishpodcast@gmail.com.